Hello and welcome to Campfire Conversations, stories from the center of the universe, where we bring the stories from our campfire to your ears, wherever you are in the world. Here we chat to friends over a favorite drink, enjoy the crackle of the fire, and let the real stories of life in the bush be told. Let's get talking to some bushveld legends and hear about their finest hours, the moments that made them question it all, and what keeps them coming back for more.
Yeah, they knock the glass over, they dance it hard, it's awesome.
Tonight's drinks of choice are brandy and coke, gin and tonic. Some of us might have delved in a little special mampur from our special guest. Let me introduce my very good friends and guest tonight. Starting with Grant Beverley. After completing the academic component of a diploma in nature conservation at the Tshwane University of Technology in 2007, I completed a year's practical training internship at Scientific Services in the Kruger National Park. I assisted with various research projects, lion monitoring, biodiversity monitoring, large tree project, and continued with biodiversity monitoring for a further 3 months before accepting an assistant field researcher position with the DeVille Cheetah and Wildlife Trust on the Wild Cheetah project. Key responsibilities included conflict mitigation, trapping cheetahs for collaring, setting and monitoring camera traps, conducting questionnaire surveys, and monitoring livestock guarding dogs. This work kickstarted my career as a carnivore conservationist and developed valuable skills suitable for the implementation of carnivore conservation. I've been researching the African wild dog population since 2010. Key responsibilities include collaring and monitoring African wild dogs, developing and managing a photographic identification database, data collection and management, running citizen science campaigns, and liaising with tourists and park officials to obtain sighting data. He has participated in many papers. Most people do envy his job. He spends his time monitoring wild dogs, rescues snared animals, finds wild dog den sites, and runs the vaccination programs. He is the Lowveld Regional Coordinator for the Endangered Wildlife Trust's Carnivore Conservation Program. However, most people think he lives a glamorous life, but he lived in a tent in Kruger for 6 months, on Mike Grover's floor for 6 months, and in a caravan on an orange farm for 6 months. He drives a sponsored Ford Bucky. According to his Twitter profile, animal lover turned carnivore researcher, extreme sports enthusiast, outgoing wild guy, trying to keep up with the times while living in the bush. And he has a very steamy pic. I think this was before his wife, who, according to the beautiful Mel, Grant went to Allen Glen High School where he was head boy and captain of the first team rugby. Fate really led him to where he is today, when the first student and the top student got first choice on placement in KMP. Grant ended up in Scientific Services, got involved in everything, and this is where he made his network and all his connections, including croc and lion sensors and aerial sensors. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kruger Park's very own wild dog man, Grant Beverley.
Thanks, Hawley.
Nice to have you here.
Quite an introduction there.
It is.
But yeah, thanks very much.
Anything you want to add?
No, not specifically. That covers quite a lot.
Cool.
And yeah, just
Pretty much all we have time for.
glad to hear that you can read, and keen to get into some of the details.
Here we go. Having watched a couple of documentaries recently, what really should we call these animals that you study? African wild dog, African painted wolf, or painted dog?
Scientifically speaking, there's no real right or wrong answer, but from a personal preference point of view, in South Africa, which is slightly different to East Africa, is the name African wild dog is probably most relevant, particularly in a country that's got 11 official languages. So regardless of what you're calling them in the English language, with so many official languages in the country, the different official languages are anyway going to refer to them as a different species. So the only difference really comes in with the difference between what they would call them in other African countries, and that's where it's more common that they're referred to as painted dogs or painted wolves. But scientifically speaking, they're not directly related to dogs in any way. And they're also not of direct descendants from wolves specifically. They evolved on their own. So the genus that they belong to, Lycaon, is loosely translated to wolf-like, and pictus being painted. So painted wolf-like would be the most accurate sort of English name for them. But in South Africa, because of all the embracing the diversity of our languages, it really doesn't make a difference. And just as a personal preference, African wild dog is the name that I refer to them as.
Love it. Thank you. That's good. Actually, I some reason thought they were more related to wolves, man. We've got a question usually comes at the end, but I've gone through this before. I ask everybody every time, can you make an animal noise? I'll give you any, but I mean, we'd obviously love
the wild dog.
I think so, man. Up to you.
Generally, when I do this, it's towards the end of the evening after a lot more drinks. But
Is that how they elect their leaders in the pack?
what the sound?
The sound.
No, it's generally more aggression. Like, the alpha male status is fought for. But I could give a wild dog who call a go. Woo, 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 woo.
Nice. Very nice, actually. Very good. Oh, we've got the captain of the Skakusa Cricket Club arrived late for the podcast. He's in the background. Welcome, Mike Grover.
Coming in hot.
He's coming in hot. While we are there, we heard somebody else in the background, Mr. Brian Masters. Grant, thanks, man.
No problem.
And not many people actually know that that's the vocalization of the African wild dog. Brian Masters. At Open Skies Wilderness, you can find him on the internet. His favorite places are the Central Kalahari Game Reserve and Pafuri. Born and raised in White River on the doorstep of Kruger, he has a whole load of Irish in him. He studied game farm management and game ranging in Pretoria, finished his diploma on the Friday and started working in the bush on the Monday. That was 20 years ago. We're very fortunate to have him today. With working experience at big names like Tundatula, Singita Labombo, and Wilderness Safaris, Pafuri walking trails. 11 years ago, he started his business, Open Skies Wilderness, specializing in small group travel, experientially focused rather than luxury focused, walking safaris, overland trips, as well as luxury FIT trips. He mostly spends his days guiding repeat clients and friends, some of them now doing their 20th safari together. He has 2.5 million views on YouTube. He features all over the internet and in Getaway magazine, who describe him as the team comedian, owner of the beast and expert bush guide. A fabulous guide, his knowledge of the bush appears to be limitless. He's also incredibly funny and an all-round great guy to travel with. His wife says, Brian is the most generous person I know, and he never says no, no matter what people ask of him. He never comes to bed after a heavy night, always sleeps on the couch of his own accord, usually watching stand-up comedy, of which he is a big fan. He is a safari and trails guide extraordinaire, father, entrepreneur, doer, mover, shaker, storyteller and entertainer. I've never seen better. In my opinion, Brian is one of the best safari guides out there. He has no boundaries and no line to cross. His encyclopaedic knowledge is sometimes astounding. He's a golfer who is passionate about all things in nature and loves what he does. He is not afraid to wrangle venomous snakes, dance or make a speech. He is a professional MC and is ordained to perform legal weddings. Brian Masters, making safari dreams a reality. It's awesome to have you here, man.
It's great to be here. Is it normal to be mildly erect at the start of a podcast? I mean, that was one hell of an intro. Jeez, like it.
Yeah, but
Thank you very much.
And it's all true.
Well,
No, we didn't make any of it up.
60-40, but we'll take it. You know what I mean? Thanks. Very nice to be here.
I'm going to kick it off straight in, man. 20 years of guiding. Let's ask you, what's your best memory? What's your scariest moment?
Weirdly, best memory, hands down, sitting with Pat Donaldson, who recently left us, another legend in the game.
Yeah,
And I
Pat,
just
man.
started at Tundatula and was sitting in a sighting with the Sohubili males. There were 4 big, sort of dark maned lions down in a sodic plain on Tawani in the Timbavati, and all 4 of them roared. And he looked over the game view at me. He was sitting in another vehicle, and he just said, "Welcome to the Timbavati. May the love affair never end." And it hasn't to this day. The Timbavati, and in particular that property, has always been a very, very special place for me. So that's certainly one of the most memorable, or a moment that I think was just like it'll stay forever vivid in my mind. Obviously, 20 years I've had some unbelievable sightings. I'll never forget probably the craziest sighting and the hardest to ever communicate via a radio was guessed that I was guiding at Singita for 17 nights, which is a very long time to try and pretend to be interested in two people. And we decided to sort of go the opposite direction to wherever the other guides were going, and we went after a female cheetah that had sub-adult cubs down in the southeast on the Londolozi boundary. And we found her. She was hunting that afternoon. We saw a herd of impala. We moved in on the impala. As she started heading straight for the impala, a zebra came the opposite direction with one of the Tsalala lionesses on its back. And within the space of about 100 meters, the cheetah had taken down the impala and the lioness had taken down the zebra. And I was saying, look out the lions. The tracker's going, it's not a lion, it's a cheetah. The guests are not knowing what I'm talking about or where to look. In the panic, she started dragging the carcass, and the next minute the Kashan male ran in and took the carcass off it and hoisted it into a tree. And that all happened in maybe 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes. It was ridiculous. And then to have to take the moment to go, all stations, and try and repeat that on a radio channel.
I've got the 3 big cats.
Yeah. Just wherever I am, just come down the side. It's cool. And also not knowing where I was didn't help either. So that was a memorable thing. So I've been very,
awesome.
very blessed.
Is that what got you 2.8 million views on YouTube, or is that a different story?
No, that's a slightly different story. But we'll delve into that later.
Okay, that's amazing. Let's leave scary for now, Grant, and it's it's awesome to be here. Obviously, Mike Grover's come in. The 4 of us are really very good friends, so there's awesome chemistry, and it's cool to have this chat. Let's just let it go wherever it wants. Grant, I know there's things. People are envious of your job. Being a wild dog researcher for Endangered Wildlife Trust. I mean, there's obviously things that immediately come to mind, but it's darting these animals, saving, maybe an animal from a snare. You've done some mad stuff, and obviously it's not as glamorous as we see, and there's a lot of paperwork, but I mean, in the times in the bush, what comes to mind? Like,
probably which has been fortunate to happen a couple of times, but it's still a unique moment every time it happens because of generally the isolation of the areas that they select to do it in, but is experiencing a wild dog den site. And the uniqueness of the size of the pups when they first emerge, and just in mammals in general, how useless they are when they're that small. And the reason why is because it sort of epitomizes what a wild dog is in terms of their social dynamics, which is what's so unique about the opportunity to watch a den where all adults in the pack help raise the pups. So it's not just the alpha pair or the adult male and female that are raising the pups. All of them they're cooperative breeders, so everything that they do is for the greater good of the pack, which is sort of epitomized when they're denning, because all their energy goes into raising those pups. And so just the opportunities over the last 10 years to experience that and watch pups going from being these small little black balls of fluff to eventually when they leave the den and start moving with a pack has been incredibly unique. And then at the same time, that connection that you have with that animal that you've been following since it was born almost, and then seeing a sighting or an interaction with other predators, for example lions coming in just after the pack has left the den, and then 2 young male lions come in and kill all of those pups, and those are the kind of moments where you take for granted how amazing it is, but then it also it's just each time it takes your breath away about how unique the opportunity is, and then how, in many ways, how sad and how raw nature can be, which is often something that people ask me, like, You know, do you become attached to the wild dogs? And when you've seen and watched something, which I'm sure goes the same for anyone else in the guiding industry, or you know, the connection that we have to nature is really, really strong, and it really does hurt when you see something that you've spent so much time with, you know, get killed. And because it's been from such a young age, and watching that animal grow up, it's completely unique, you know.
No, it's awesome. It really touched me. What you're saying, I think I've said it to you before, that there were periods in my guiding career when we sometimes in our area where we're operating we'd have a wild dog den site, and then the next year we'd have it again, and it's incredible, it's so special, but only the next year when they're not around, and the next year you don't find a den site and you don't see them, and I go the next year for 3 years, I didn't see wild dogs at a den site. It started hurting me, and I've mentioned this to you before, that it is so special when you've got dogs denning and you have the privilege to be there. Especially when you talk to South Africans who've been coming to the Kruger Park for years, never saw them for 30 years, and now in our generation I've grown up seeing them. In my soul place, the Timbavati, which, you know, we really connect about that, Brian, is, yeah, what a privilege. Hey?
But it's amazing though, you ask guides across the African continent, what's your favorite animal? And 9 out of 10 will say wild dogs. And there is such a charisma to them that it's just, they are just that very special animal. So, yeah.
No, absolutely.
Which is, it's something that's also quite difficult to get across, particularly to a first-time safari goer, or someone that doesn't understand. And, you know, going back to the link of them not evolving or not being directly related to domestic dogs, or rather domestic dogs not being directly, you know, because they are such a unique species, they've got a completely unique lineage. And only once you spend time with wild dogs do you realize how completely unique they are in terms of their character, which is something that you know, I strive to get across to first-time safari goers, that how lucky they are to experience them more frequently in South Africa, and then also how the more often a safari or someone comes on safari, it's almost instantaneous that they become in love with wild dogs. So like repeat guests or whatever automatically almost develop this love for them, because they're such a complex, interesting carnivore. You know, there's so much to them.
100%.
It reminds me of you in many ways. Complex, unique.
Not quite complex.
Like a wild dog.
Yeah.
Brian Masters, you've got one more trail in you. One more wilderness trail with one wilderness guide. Where would it be and with who?
Probably
Not around the garden.
Not around the garden, yeah, no, for sure.
I'll
Probably.
just throw in there. Brian was part of the Bruce Lawson gig. He did 150 Ks, 3 days,
Yeah,
18-kilogram backpack on his back.
yeah, I'm going to be the first person to put the hand up and say the last day it may be close to about 10, maybe even 8 kgs. I dusted a bit of, yes, I was hurting, but
it's been
I still
what
did
an
150 k's.
Yeah,
so
what
it
an
was there,
awesome
but yeah.
achievement.
But I can answer that quite easily. I think Fraser Gear would be my walking partner, and it would be a under the stars traverse of the Makuleki Contractual Park. I think that would be a 5-nighter out sleeping under the stars would be, that, and with Fraser. I've never met a more encyclopedic mind and a more inquiring mind. So if you are walking and there's a baobab with a hole in it, you know Fraser is going to get his headlamp on and have his head up that baobab and checking out. And the next minute you've learned 3 new bat species, because Fraser, instead of walking past a hole, stopped and shoved his head up it and rattled off 3 new species. You're like, what? Never even heard of that bat. So yeah, so I think that would be last trail or whatever. I think that would be the choices. Eh?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I am, as everybody knows, a fan of the Makuleki. It's a special place.
Yeah,
for all of us.
very,
Grant, to your favorite place that you've ever been to in Africa?
It's probably because it's a bit nostalgic, but I would still say some special areas within Kruger National Park, and we've obviously a couple of times mentioned Makuleki, which in itself is a special place, and I've seen wild dogs coming through those fever tree forests up there, and there's some similar areas in terms of some of the scenery, like Mashatu I find quite similar in terms of the scenery, but just the remoteness of Kruger in many aspects, although it's not off the beaten track, so to say, the uniqueness of having the opportunity to access some remote areas in Kruger, and the nostalgia because I grew up as a South African going to Kruger. Kruger has always been a special place, despite going to East Africa and other places in Africa. I will always come back to Kruger, and I mean, even during the previous couple of months, during the lockdown over a couple of months ago, it was just no, but so the nostalgia really comes from having gone there so many times from a young age, and I think all of us, or many of us in the industry or within conservation, would also thank our parents for giving us the opportunity to go to Kruger from a young age, and that's really what it instills, which and then in the industry that we're in, it gives us the opportunity to raise kids in this situation or this environment as well, which is it's just such a privilege to see them almost seeing what you saw through their eyes, so
yeah, it is
still
a
Kruger.
privilege. It is, and then that just keeps going. Brian, animal noise or a joke? Up to you. Watch out for the warthogs behind you.
Oh, hello, shallow pig. Gee whiz, okay. I think probably joke would definitely be more in my thing.
Give it to us.
So we'll have to think about this one for a second.
Cool.
Quick one, all right? There's a chicken and an egg lying in bed together, having a little guaza. The egg wipes a bit of sweat off his brow, looks at it and says, "Does that answer your question?"
I love it.
Yeah.
Well done, well done. We are running short on time, so I need something good from you. Grant Beverley, how many times have you hit a cow? We know you travel a lot for your job. At night, saving endangered species.
So it does concern me a little bit that I actually had to think about if it was 2 or 3.
It's also concerning.
Cows beware.
I have deduced that it's definitely 3, but the third one was the cow kind of ran into the side of the vehicle more than me hitting it.
Okay.
Yeah, but 3.
But the cow made contact with the car, is what I'm saying.
But the cow hit me, I didn't hit the cow.
That may in fact be 3 more than the rest of us around the fireside here.
It's definitely.
Yeah.
I'll be glad to say that 2 of the 3 did
Run
run away from the car
okay.
afterwards.
Yeah. So what you're saying is they died away from the road.
Mr. Brian Martins, and I mean what I said earlier. Like, you are an amazing guide, man. So,
Cheers.
I'll let you. I mean, what you want to tell us a story of?
No, I think so often we've got this idea in our heads about how nature's going to be, and one of the things that I'm obviously passionate about walking safaris. I've always had some of my most meaningful, tactile experiences on foot, and often my passion is watching someone's passion get ignited whilst on foot, or converting that person who was such a passionate photographic back of a game viewer person to going, I love that, but I still want to do walking safaris and I want to get out, and yes, it's less game, but the experiences are more real. So whether it be being rolled by a buffalo in the Pafuri, and having, I don't want to say the presence of mind, but having something that's so much more than just a passion, getting up saying, okay, it's up to you guys, I'm okay, we can continue this walk, or we can go back to the camp, and they're just going, we're out. But managing to talk them around and going back on a walk that same afternoon and tracking buffalo that same afternoon, that sort of thing. So I think getting people passionate about what I'm passionate about is the thing that excites me the most. And all the stories and the funny tales and accidentally flashing your balls to guests and all these things that happen to me, or vomiting in front of guests. I mean, I've really had a very colourful guiding career for 20 years. But every single one of those little situations kind of builds you to a point where it's just, I look back and I used to think, especially when you finish studying, you think, the theory, I've got the theory checked. How much is the experience? How much does it equate to in terms of value? And now I look back and I go, Christ, after 20 years, I don't feel I'm experienced enough because I see guys who are 50 years and 40 years in the industry, and I think, fuck, these oaks are next level. So it's I think that's the bush for me is something that just keeps on giving and keeps on showing you and humbling you, because the more you learn, the less you know, and the more you realize, geez, I gotta get a book on fungi now, or get a whatever. So yeah, but so that's me rambling about nothing
love it.
and everything.
Grant, we're gonna cut it up, but what do you want to say to people about wild dogs who are on Facebook? Yeah.
Look, I mean, and it's a question that gets asked quite often in terms of what makes them so special, or what makes them endangered, and what are we doing to conserve them? And it's something I've thought about quite a lot recently, and I think more frequently, or more often than ever, people are starting to realize that the planet and conservation or nature can go on without the human population, and it's a privilege for us in conservation to be able to work in these areas when you're closer to realizing that the human population or the human species is just having a negative effect on sort of the balance of nature in many aspects. And it does sort of drive me to continue doing what we're doing, just to slow down the rate of species extinction, and that's the thing with wild dogs. They're South Africa's most endangered carnivore, but the facts and the sort of scare tactics to try and make people realize that wild dogs are important, more and more often, or more and more regularly, I'm realizing that it's not that important, and it's not going to change until people realize that without human influence and interference, nature will carry on just by itself, And I think it links to Brian talking about like a walking safari, is to actually go out and experience wilderness as close to the original feeling or aspects of nature as possible, and to have the continued opportunity to experience nature as close as possible, despite what the threats and everything that wild dogs are facing, is a privilege, and something that I hope more and more people continue to realize, that going back to nature is important, and without humans there, things will carry on. Humans are increasing the rate of extinction and increasing the rate of habitat destruction and fragmentation, which are still the biggest drivers of population declines across all species. But to have that opportunity to continue having the close link to nature is something that money can't buy, and that's something that the industry is also offering. It's an opportunity to experience something that money just simply cannot buy, with getting closer to nature.
So that reconnecting with the wilderness that's within all of us by being in the wilderness that's around us, and I think that it sounds kind of airy-fairy, but it's ingrained in our genetics that there is wilderness within us. We come from a wilderness place, and when we are in the wilderness, we are probably the truest versions of ourselves.
I love it. Yeah. Let's leave it there, man. That's an awesome parting thought. Brian Masters, Grant Beverley, Legends of the Bush.
Thank you.
Legends of the Center of the Universe. You can find Brian Open Skies Wilderness at Open Skies Wilderness. He loves to have a conversation on social media. You can donate to the wild dogs and
cheers, thanks,
Grant's daughter's school fees at Endangered Wildlife Trust, at EWT, and at Grant Beverley. Love ya.
Fantastic. Thanks for having us.
Cool.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Brilliant.
Right.
Yeah, stop eating bats.
Yeah. Stop eating.
Hashtag stop eating bats.
Oh yes, we needed more time with these oaks. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. You can find today's guests online via their social media handles linked in this podcast description. Go ahead and give them a follow, share some love, and show some support for what they are doing. We welcome your questions and comments and encourage you to let us know what you're thinking. Who do you want to meet around our campfire, and what burning questions do you have for these bush legends? Find us on social media via the links in the description and tune in to watch our podcast recordings from around the campfire on our YouTube playlist.
Yeah, they knock a glass over, they dance it hard, it's awesome.